In 2001, I shat myself as an adult for the first time. I was living in a shared house with 5 other people, and my bedroom was at the top of the house. I was in bed, and I suddenly got this extreme urge to go. So I jumped up to run down the 2 flights of stairs to get to the toilet and made it as far as the first landing. Well, the next 3 days was spent camped out in the living room because that was closest to the bathroom, and I was needing to go to the toilet upwards of 20 times a day. I didn't bother going to the GP because I just assumed I had food poisoning. And even though it was an awful experience, I thought very little of it again once I recovered. And I didn't tell anybody. I mean, would you tell anybody that you'd shat yourself and you weren't even drunk? A few months later, I moved out of that house and into the flat above the restaurant where I worked with my mum. And I decided to get a part-time job, a second job. I mean, the restaurant was only busy in the evenings and weekends, so I needed extra money to keep me in champagne and oysters. So I got a job working for American Express. I worked from Monday to Friday, from 9 till 1 in the afternoon. And then I worked from 5 until 10, midnight at the weekends at the restaurant. It sounds like a lot of hours, but to be honest, I was in my mid-20s and I was used to doing double those hours plus studying and partying when at university, so it really should have been really easy. You know what? In the first couple of weeks were a piece of piss. After that, I was finding it really difficult to stay awake at my desk. In fact, if it wasn't for the loud beeping in my ear, inbound call centre, I would have fallen asleep at work. The office was about a 10-minute walk away from where I lived above the restaurant. So I'd finish work at 1, be home by 20 past, and every day without fail I'd be fast asleep by 2 p.m. I had to set an alarm to wake me up at 4 o'clock so I could splash some water on my face and get downstairs in time to open the restaurant. But I was finding most days I was sleeping through it. So I'd find myself being gently shaken awake by Brian, our lovely head chef, or screamed awake by my mother. I told myself that I was tired because of all the extra hours I was working. That or I was getting old. I was 23. A few months later, I shat myself as an adult for the second time. Like the first time, I was at home. Unlike the first time, there weren't 2 flights of stairs separating me from the bathroom because I had an ensuite. Like the first time, I told myself I had food poisoning, and I didn't tell anybody. And then about a month later, I started to get really painful wrists. I mean, they were throbbing. So I did go to the GP for that. I was diagnosed with repetitive strain injury. They thought it had been caused by the keyboard work at American Express, and I was signed off for a month on full pay. I shat myself again during that month off. So I told myself that I must be allergic to seafood. Told everybody that I knew that I was allergic to seafood. Didn't tell them how I'd come to this conclusion. The next couple of years actually was spent in a constant cycle of terrible fatigue, wrist pain, hip pain, crippling tummy pain, constant bouts of food poisoning or me just about making it to the toilet in time. All my friends were convinced that I wasn't taking my seafood allergy seriously enough because my bottom kept on exploding. And then, in 2004, on a joint holiday to Portugal and Portugal and Dublin, I bled from my bottom for the first time. I continued to bleed for a week. Every time I used the toilet, bright red blood would fill the basin. Well, this time I did tell someone. I told my mum I was freaking out. She insisted that I make an appointment to see the GP, which I did. She diagnosed me with hemorrhoids, gave me some cream, told me to rub it on my bum, everything would be fine. But then I bled again, and again, and again. And every time the blood was darker and gooier than the last. Well, I was getting sick and tired of it. My mum was getting sick and tired of the constant phone calls. I mean, as a woman, I'm used to the sight of blood in a toilet. I mean, I'm not fazed by it. It's a normal monthly occurrence. I've bled every single month since the age of 11. Blood does not scare me. At least it didn't until it started coming out of my backside. So I made another appointment to see the doctor. Again, she told me I had hemorrhoids. Again, she gave me some cream to rub on my bum. Again, I was sent home on my way. Well, my mum was not convinced and she was not happy with the diagnosis. She told me that I needed to take in a sample so the doctor could see exactly what I was talking about. I told her I couldn't do that. I hadn't been asked to do one. I hadn't been given a sample pot. So my mum was like, you don't need no sample pot. Just get yourself a baggie and do a poop in there and get all that mucus and blood and scoop it all up in there. So that's what I did. I made an emergency appointment to see my GP, walked into her office, produced my plastic bag full of the blood and the pus and the mucus and the poo, and asked her to tell me that it was normal. Well, as you can imagine, she was absolutely disgusted. And then that disgust turned to shock, and then it turned to anger. And as she was ushering me out of her office, she told me that she'd make me an appointment to be seen by a gastroenterologist, but she couldn't tell me how long it would take to get the appointment because I wasn't a priority, because she already knew that I had hemorrhoids, and it wasn't like I had cancer or anything. I mean, she actually said that to me. She said, "Oh, don't worry, it's not like you've got cancer or anything." And just like that, I'm standing outside the doctor's surgery in the middle of the street, crying with fury because I couldn't believe that I'd been fobbed off yet again. So I went home, phoned my auntie Sarah, and she's the queen of the sternly worded letter of complaint. And she helped me write a letter to the GP practice manager. Well, within a week, I had an appointment at the Royal Sussex County Hospital for a colonoscopy. Now, for those of you yet to have a colonoscopy, it's basically when a camera is inserted into your anus in order to take photographs and collect biopsies of your large intestine. Now, in order to get the decent photographs, the entire area has to be clear of all waste. This is achieved by giving you the world's strongest, most evil laxative known to man to drink. Word of advice for those of you yet to go through the joys of colonoscopy prep. You want to make sure that you download your favourite movies and box sets to your laptop or your iPad or whatever mobile device that you use, and that you spend whatever money is needed on the softest, most luxurious toilet paper you can find, because trust me, you're going to need it. Anyway, I was actually quite excited about having a colonoscopy. I wanted to find out what was going on. I wanted to know what was happening to my body. And also, I'm one of those people that loves to watch medical procedures on television. I'm not freaked out by them. I'm not fazed. So when I was told that I would be sedated for my colonoscopy, I was a little bit disappointed. Well, I needn't have worried. The sedation was very, very light. I saw and heard absolutely everything. Now, at that point, I had no idea what a healthy colon should have looked like, but I knew that what I was looking at most definitely was not healthy. My insides were a bloody mess, literally. And then I heard the consultant who was doing the examination mutter the words, "Oh my goodness," to his colleague. And that's when I knew that whatever was wrong with me, the prognosis was not going to be good.